Welcome to Cards Hub 365, powered by Gray Bar, and of course, all content here at Sports Hub STL is presented by DraftKings. The crown is yours. Stefan, Caray here with Brenden, Schaeffer, and I'm hearing that it is rainy in the Midwest, not just in St. Louis, but also in Cincinnati. So weather is expected right around game time for the Cardinals, who look to even up the series at one game apiece. We covered it on the post-game show last night. More of the same. Those close losses for St. Louis, 3-1. They were defeated by the Reds, who have really played some good ball over the last week or so. 5-game winning streak. And the Cardinals, all they can do is set their sights on today. A couple of roster moves. Jose Barrero, the 27-year-old, comes up. He expects to fill in as the backup shortstop and play some outfield for the Cardinals as Thomas Saggese goes down. But let's talk a little bit about yesterday, Brenden. I'd love to get your thoughts on what you saw from the game. Just a very sparing offensive performance from the Cardinals, and they just haven't been able to win on the road.
Yeah, Stefan, the road woes continue, right? Down to 2-12 with the road record, and it's kind of strange, right? It's not as though the Cardinals are getting this robust home attendance that should be buoying their performance there. Busch is always a great place to play, of course, as the home team, but it's just striking how different the records are. And what's starting to add up for me is a lot of times when a team is struggling in the standings, and it's fair to say that the Cardinals are right now, when that happens, normally you can point to starting pitching and say, well, they must not be getting consistent work from their rotation. And that just hasn't been the case. The Cardinals among the league leaders in quality starts, but as we talked about this morning on the Randy Carricker show, they're not getting the most out of those quality starts. And yesterday was another example. Andre Palante goes 6 innings, gives up 3 runs. That, in all senses of the job of a starting pitcher, puts your team in a position to be able to win a game like that. And the offense wasn't able to muster much against Nick Martinez, who's statistically probably the least capable of the 4 pitchers the Cardinals will see in this series, at least according to this year's numbers. And so that's disappointing to see an opportunity like that go by the wayside.
Yeah, and you look at Miles Michaelis today, somebody that, as you mentioned, has struggled this year, but over his last few starts has really looked good. In his last 3 starts, 2.87 ERA over 15 2/3. He's given them a chance to win. The question is, can the offense help him and provide some run support? You're running into a really good Cincinnati Reds team. A few figures here that I think will be eye-popping for Cardinals fans. Reds have won 13 of their last 19 games. It's the 3rd best record in the majors since April 7th, behind only the Mariners and the Mets. And they lead the majors in runs per game, OPS, and average with runners in scoring position over that stretch. They are a very hot baseball team right now. And unfortunately for the Cardinals, they just seem to be getting the poor luck of the draw in terms of the opponents they've been playing. Everybody they've been playing have been red hot. So maybe today's the day where the Cardinals can cool down the red hot, Cincinnati Reds here at Great American Ballpark.
Yeah, and look, I think that's got to start from getting some more consistent punch offensively. The Reds yesterday, I believe, had 5 extra base hits in the game. The Cardinals got their work early with the way the first inning went. You get the double from Nootbaar. Arenado drives him in with 1, and you're feeling like you're off to a pretty good start offensively. From there, they just couldn't get anything else going. Some double plays hurt you. Like you go for the bunt attempt there with runners on first and second, and Mason Wynn not able to advance the runners, and so you kind of feel like you lose a little bit of momentum there. Lars Nootbaar hits one on the screws, and it turns into a double play, and next thing you know, you're like, well, wait a minute. We just had those first and second nobody out situations that you dream of, and it falls by the wayside. That was just happening, I think, in the moments where the Cardinals had something brewing. They weren't able to sustain it, and offensively, that's really what it comes down to. You just see the number of days lately when the Cardinals are scoring 1 run, and you're thinking, man, they got a pretty good pitching performance. Even the bullpen is starting to turn the corner, Stefan, from where we saw it on the previous road trip. And so when you're getting those aspects of your club clicking, it can be disappointing to not see it come to fruition with a tight win. Like yesterday could have been one of those 4-3 games that you crave, and the Cardinals could have been on the upside of it, but they just couldn't break through offensively.
Yeah, it was their 8th time this season scoring 1 or less runs. They were 1 for 6 with runners in scoring position, and the Reds just capitalized. I mean, top to bottom in their order, there aren't a lot of places to hide. Obviously, Elly De La Cruz is perennially talked about as one of the best players in the National League. He's on a 12-game hitting streak. Gavin Lux has been hotter than any hitter in baseball in his 12-game hitting streak, hitting .512 over that span. So you've got to really be careful if you're the Cardinals on who you choose to pitch to, how you choose to pitch to them, and what situations you let those guys come up in. If they're up with runners in scoring position, we've already talked about how good they are with runners in scoring position. So you've got to find a way to limit and mitigate the damage that the Reds have been able to do against their last few opponents.
Yep, and we'll see the ways the Cardinals are able to go about doing that. I think it's been a story of the season for St. Louis that you haven't had all elements of the team clicking at once outside of a select few days where it's very evident that that's happening. Those days normally have come at home. To be able to do it on the road now is going to be that challenge. And I don't know how you view that, Stefan, the 2-12 road record versus the, what are they, 10-5 at home? Like they've been basically a different ball club. You're a high-end playoff team at home, and on the road, you're looking like the Colorado Rockies or the Chicago White Sox. It doesn't really compute why that would be. Is it still early enough in the season for us to kind of hand wave it away and say, it's just small sample size right now and things will begin to level out? But it is something that is striking and going to have to be resolved at a place where the Reds, as you mentioned, are playing good baseball. They've got a good manager, as we talked about on the Randy show this morning. That's a team under Terry Francona that you feel like might get better as the year goes along because of the veteran manager and leadership that they have. So you're kind of going into the lion's den once again. And does it become that self-fulfilling prophecy where you go, yeah, we struggle on the road? Kind of feels like that sets the tone from the beginning of a series or of a game when you're away from Busch Stadium, and you don't want it to be that way. And Ollie Marmol didn't agree with the assertion yesterday and said, look, we don't really think or talk about this unless it's being asked by the media. The guys in there are just going out and playing every day, whether home or road. But it is one of those things that as an outsider, you look at those trends and it's hard not to notice.
Well, and talking last night to Sarah Daly, if you eliminate a percentage of those road losses, the record looks a lot different. Yeah, you can point to the bullpen struggles. Yes, you can point to maybe the offensive woes, but they can almost always be characterized to a road performance. You'll take 10-5 at home. You just happen to have the second worst record on the road in Major League Baseball behind the Rockies, and you happen to have the second highest ERA in baseball on the road behind the Marlins. So if you can limit that and make it a little bit better, this Cardinals team has a chance to be really good. I'm curious what you think of this, okay? The fans have been frustrated over the last couple of seasons. I think that's safe to say. With a loss today, the Cardinals would match their second worst 30-game start to a season in the wild card era since 1994. Only the 2023 Cardinals had a worse record through 30 games. They were 10-20. So that is a historical stat to think about for this team, to try and find a way to claw their way back into this division, because sometimes it's not always about how you finish, it's how you start. I think the Cardinals need a win here to try and stop another losing streak on the road.
Yeah, you don't want that to become the trend on the road. It's still early in the season, but those slow starts can definitely impact the team later on. You can find a team that starts like that, and they could play above 500 the rest of the season, but that's still a team that's only going to win about 77 games if push comes to shove, and that's the way you look back on your first month of the calendar. So it is important to be able to find a way to do that, and it's going to come today from a guy like Miles Mikolas, hopefully giving you what he has given the Cardinals 4 out of 5 times that he's pitched this year, but we've seen the blow up game, and it did happen on the road against Boston. So you just hope that he's able to kind of come through it and do a little bit more than he did certainly in that start, but do a little bit more of what he's been capable of doing recently for the Cardinals. The point is, though, as we've seen, like that doesn't always result in what you need. You mentioned this idea that, okay, you could take away a couple of these road losses that were close. Cardinals were very good in close games last year. Maybe this year you're still working to see that luck turn in your favor. Sometimes you make your own luck, but you can kind of play that same game when it comes to these quality starts in the record there. The Cardinals are 6-8 in their 14 quality starts. A team like the Astros, who also has 14, I believe they're tied at the top of the league. They're 9-5 in those games. You say the Cardinals go 9-5 in their quality starts right now. They're above 500. That's how slim those margins can be from these areas of the game that the Cardinals are doing well, they're performing well in. And typically when you get those types of performances, as we talk here on Cards Hub 365, powered by Gray Bar and presented by DraftKings, the crown is yours. Those can end up being beneficial to teams that get the results they're looking for. The Cardinals just haven't been able to do it in those margins yet, Stefan. And there's a lot of folks in the comments right now saying, yeah, I think the road record turns around. It's maybe too early to worry about some of these small sample size stats. But Joseph mentioning the bullpen to be better. Like the Cardinals are going to need these things to be able to turn around and consistently do it, Stefan. But for the time being, you are your record. And I do think that's important to kind of sit back and go, hey, if you think you're better than this, we do too. Got to go out there and prove it, though, at some point.
Well, Missouri is the show me state. And I think that applies to baseball and hockey at this time of the year.
Certainly.
So I think the fans in St. Louis want to be shown and proven that this team can go out and compete. But we did talk about this yesterday, and it brings up a really interesting point. Would you rather have a team that is struggling and just not even being competitive in games, or would you rather have a team that is competitive in games? You look at the margin of loss and the margin of victory in defense of the other teams for the Cardinals, and it's pretty slim. They're winning the majority of the games by 1 or 2 runs. They're not winning the majority of games by 5 or 6. They're not losing the majority of games by 5 or 6. Most of their losses are within 3 runs. And it's maddening in some ways, thinking, hey, okay, we could have won that game on a nightly basis. But it's also good to see that this young group that they're trying to figure out what their capabilities are is competing, and they're learning how to play at the major league level.
Yeah, you had the Eric Fetty start on Sunday at Busch Stadium against the Brewers, which just wasn't their day. That was really the first example since going all the way back to that swing from the Red Sox to Pittsburgh. They lost 8-4 the first day in Pittsburgh. That's the first week of April that we're talking about, and it hasn't been, it's that stretch of time between the Cardinals really kind of getting their clocks cleaned in a game. I think maddening is a great word that you used. It's frustrating. It can be one of those things that you ask, like, what's better, to have come close and not been able to get over the hump, or to just be losing games like the Rockies and the White Sox of last year were notable for doing. I think you'd rather have a team that's putting up fight, because you can at least see the glimpses there and the flashes of potentially being able to get on a run and turn things around. But I think when that never facilitates and it never materializes, that's when you're going, well, maybe I wish they were just getting their butts kicked every day, because if the reward and the payoff isn't going to be there at the end, then I'm just going to be frustrated by this group that just feels like they're a touch off from being able to go out there and play the way that we know when they're at their highest of capabilities, they do it. But to do that consistently, maybe it's a challenge, though, Stefan, to expect the Cardinals to be that team in this season, where we do know they're transitioning toward what the future looks like, and they're being, I think, rightfully stubborn is the phrase I would use when it comes to guys like Jordan Walker and when it comes to Nolan Gorman. Like, they need to be stubborn about putting those guys in the lineup pretty much every single day, or you're never really going to, if there is a payoff at the end of the rainbow, a light at the end of the tunnel to be found, you're not going to be the ones finding it if you don't let these guys have that runway and that opportunity. And that can be frustrating, because if you're managing this like a regular season, you would say, like a standard Cardinals season, you would say, well, a guy like Gorman, if he's taking those at-bats that aren't as good, well, you bench him or you send him down, and that's just not going to benefit the Cardinals down the road. I think they need to find out what a guy like him can do through some adversity this year.
Well, not to mention, they've already tried that tactic with Gorman over the last couple of years. They've tried it with Walker. And what fans, I think, need to realize is the Cardinals front office, they're doing what they said they were going to do. For better or for worse, wins and losses, they're doing what they said they're going to do. They're going to give runway to these young players. They're going to figure out exactly what they have and either move forward with this group or find other people. And right now, the Cardinals have shown promise. I think some positives that we can touch on: Wilson Contreras on a 10-game hitting streak, 359 during that stretch. He's 14 for 39 over the course of those 10 games. And he's starting to turn a corner. As he turns a corner, as Ivan Herrera comes back, Lars Nootbaar is hitting well. This team will be a lot more complete. And I think it takes them winning a couple of games on the road to prove to themselves, hey, this isn't as scary as it was at the beginning of the year. We can turn this thing around. We know we can win at home. We're very comfortable at home, even early in the season. So if we can focus on eliminating our biggest problem, which is our road performances, this team will inch close to 500 and then further beyond that.
Yep, and I think that's what it comes down to. The challenges that it will come at the expense of, like, day-to-day, every minuscule move made may not be to absolutely sell out for the win that day, but that's what you're doing for the long haul, to hope that by investing in some of those players that you want to see more from, those guys turn into the obvious choices for those lineup spots. Those guys turn into the franchise cornerstone players that the Cardinals are certainly hoping some of them can be. And so time will tell when it comes to that. I want to get your thoughts, Stefan, on this question from Joseph, kind of talking more about Ivan Herrera. And he was really the guy, the Energizer Bunny of that Cardinal lineup when he was in there. Right now, though, you're kind of going, all right, he's coming back relatively soon. We've seen some good things from Pages behind the plate. Like, when you talk about quality starts, you can credit, pitch calling from Pedro Pages as a facet of that for sure. And certainly I would think that the guys like throwing to him. How often do you think we'll see Herrera behind the plate? Because I think his bat in the lineup has to be there 5-6 days a week. But will it be a split between the Cardinals will have to take that underperforming DH position, which has shuffled through guys like Burleson, and now you're seeing Gorman getting more opportunities, whether he's in the field or as the DH, he's in there. Does that kind of become a push comes to shove moment, because when Ollie Marmol talked about the runway for Gorman, he didn't say he's playing every day all year, but he said, look, we've mapped out this upcoming stretch where he's going to get that run. I wonder if it even can oscillate the other way as early as the return of Herrera. If they say, look, we're going to have Herrera behind the plate a few times a week, but he might have to end up DHing the other days. I'm curious what you see potentially happening in that situation.
Well, I think the odd man out in this situation is more than likely going to be Luke and Baker, given that Herrera has performed and Baker has struggled a little bit.
Yeah.
You have a proven major league hitter in Herrera. Baker has not quite proven himself yet in terms of consistency. You know the power is there. It's important for him to get at bats in this ballpark in particular, because one swing could be the difference between him turning it all around and him not. But Herrera, I think the majority of the time will be the DH. I think they're going to be comfortable with him there and then slowly work him back in. I'm curious what Joel Pozo does, what happens with him, if they're willing to just ride Pedro Pages as long as they need to until Herrera is ready to get back in the saddle. But remember, Herrera has struggled to throw out runners. He's struggled to control the run game. He has been a good pitch caller, but I think Pozo has been a breath of fresh air. He's helped defensively. He's hit pretty well. So, only time will tell what the Cardinals will do. I know they'll make the best decision for themselves moving forward, but they have a lot of depth, and that's a good problem to have.
It certainly is. And, you hope that what happens with Herrera is he jumps right back into the lineup and becomes the hitter that he had been again, because he was really a focal point carrying your lineup. And we had some speculation. I was looking to see the Cardinal lineup for this afternoon if it had been posted yet. I haven't seen it. I'll continue refreshing, but there was some talk of, well, maybe Mason Wynn, slides up into the number 2 spot. They've been looking for that right-handed complement to guys like Nootbaar and Brendan Donovan at the top third of the order. It's been Wilson Contreras largely. And, for those who thought, they really need to move him down in the lineup, which at certain points I was saying you might as well go ahead and do and see what you jar loose for Wilson. There's been that aspect of, look, we're going to keep him as a guy in the top third, and he's started to produce. You mentioned Stefan, the 10-game hitting streak that he's on. But curious with the way that Mason Wynn has looked, if that's a guy you bump up. We talked this morning on the Randy show. Maybe you bump Jordan Walker up at some point in time and try to get him a different look, where instead of batting in the lower third of the lineup, maybe you energize Jordan Walker by kind of saying, hey, we got confidence in you. You're going to go bat in front of Donovan and maybe see some different pitches as a result. And that's another way that you can do it. This Herrera factor also plays into that, Stefan, in terms of when he returns, who obviously is demoted as a result, but then who maybe gets squeezed on playing time is going to be another factor that the Cardinals will be looking at for sure.
Yeah, they certainly will be. And if it wasn't obvious, baseball season is officially underway, and it's time to step up to the plate with DraftKings Pick 6. Think of DraftKings Pick 6 as your fastball right down the middle. It's the easiest way to play for cash and take a shot at a big win. Just select 2 or more players and choose if they'll have more or less of a stat. Pick 6 is available in most states, including California, Texas, Georgia, Missouri, and more. Cash in your baseball knowledge. New players get $50 in Pick 6 credits instantly on just a $5 entry. So what you're going to want to do is download the DraftKings Pick 6 app and use code STL Sports. That's code STL Sports for new customers to play $5, get $50 in Pick 6 credits. Better payouts, bigger wins, only with Pick 6 from DraftKings. The crown is yours.
Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org in Connecticut. Must be 18 and over. Age and eligibility restrictions vary by jurisdiction. Pick 6 not available everywhere, including New York and Ontario. Void where prohibited. 1 per new customer. Bonus awarded as non-withdrawable Pick 6 credits that expire in 14 days. Limited time offer. See terms at pick6.draftkings.com/promos.
So let's dive in real quick to today. And number 2 in the order is something that we just talked about. This is a really good point. Ollie said today win at number 2 on Gas House Gang. So Tom Ackerman, I'm sure, had the scoop on that one. Hope he's doing well. But number 2 for Mason Wynn, I think that's a good decision. What we know about Ollie Marmol and what we know about the Cardinals is they like to have lefty-righty following each other in the order. Now, I think if Brendan Donovan were a right-handed hitter, he'd be the perfect number 2 hitter at this point in time. You get Nootbaar on, you get Donovan to move him first to third, then you're in business every time. But you could put Donovan pretty much anywhere in the order, and right now he's going to deliver. I like that. I like the way that that's looking. Now let's talk a little bit about the Reds starting pitcher today. It is Brady Singer, who, if you remember, was the guy that was drafted by the Kansas City Royals. I don't know Was it him that had that video of him paying off his parents' loans and their mortgage of their house a few years back?
I don't remember that. I do not remember that detail, but it wouldn't surprise me. No, that's not coming to mind for me.
Well, I think it was him, and it was a really emotional video. But anyway, he is second in the National League in wins with 4 of them. Only Brenden, who is with the Arizona Diamondbacks, has 5. So he's been very good. He's been very effective, and his last start was probably his best one since his 7-inning outing on March 31st. He went 6 innings, giving up 2 earned runs, no walks, 8 strikeouts. That was April 23rd at the Marlins. So the Cardinals are going to have to go to work and try to get into that bullpen. Nick Martinez got deep into the game. I think that's really what stymied St. Louis is the final 10 hitters were retired by that really talented Cincinnati bullpen. So if you can get Singer out of the game early and tack on some runs in the early stages of the game, you're going to have a lot of fun here in game number 2.
Yeah, and Singer has gotten into the 5th, 6th usually. He's got 27 and a third innings pitched in 5 starts. So you do the math, about 5.5 innings per start is what he's averaging. The 32 strikeouts, though, kind of jump off the page in only 27 innings. Like, he seems to really be finding his footing with Cincinnati. Did a nice job for the Royals last year, and that was sort of a year where after a lot of that, I looked it up, 2018, Christmas of 2018, Stefan, as you mentioned, having that gesture for his parents paying off the mortgage and things like that was a highly touted draft pick. Kind of struggled to find its consistency with the Royals over the years, but really was a big part of them making the playoffs last year. The Royals said, we need a leadoff hitter that can produce, so they traded him for Jonathan India. That's been kind of mixed results so far with the way that he has started slow to the season. But for Singer, it certainly seems to be that he's finding a home with Cincinnati. He's been a strikeout guy for them this season, and so the Cardinals, need to be disciplined, I think, within the strike zone this evening, Stefan, if they're going to find their footing against a starter that's been pitching pretty well lately.
Yeah, I mean, and he is looking to become the first Reds starter to go 5-0 with a win in each of his first 5 decisions since Anthony DeSclafani began the 2016 season 6-0. So he's on the brink of some history for the Reds, and hopefully the Cardinals can slow him down a bit. I think he's found a great home in Cincinnati, and it begs the question, right? I think you look at the Reds and how they've performed over the last few years. They've been sort of a middle-of-the-pack team with tons of talent, a really good farm system. Are they for real? And so far, I think the answer is yes, they're for real this year. They are going to be a competitive team. They have good pitching. They have a good bullpen. They have some star power with Ellie De La Cruz and beyond. So the Cardinals need to take that into account. They are not playing the Reds of old. They're playing the new kids on the block that are managed, by the way, by Terry Francona, who's probably going to be a Hall of Famer.
Yeah, and that certainly adds a boost to your club. And they've been that team the last several years where we've come into the seasons going, look out for the Reds, look out for the Reds. And then the Reds kind of fade as it goes along. Their pitching maybe doesn't stay intact from a health perspective. And even position player wise, they've had a lot of guys on the IL over the last couple of years when you thought that group of guys like Matt McLean and company was going to kind of take the step forward. And so you haven't necessarily found that consistency. Maybe they're starting to get that together under a veteran manager and one that is widely respected throughout the game. And so we'll see what that does for their club throughout the season. But certainly they're off to a strong start. They're nipping right at the heels of the Cubs, and they're getting to play at home again this evening and over the course of the next couple of days that follow. And we'll see what ends up happening there. We're getting some comments on the Cardinals' perspective, though, Stefan. Folks wondering where the power has gone as a team, thinking the team needs that alpha edge to their intensity, getting too much of a soft vibe. I know, and you've been around this game, and certainly guys like your dad have been around. When you follow a team and you're around them, you understand the work that's put in. You understand that there's not a day where teams are, they're just kind of mailing it in. But I did use the perspective last night where describing the way that the Cardinals game went offensively, it just kind of felt like they were a little too cruise control. It was just kind of like, and again, when you use that characterization of going through the motions, it's not to say that there's not effort that's being put in, but you're watching those at-bats, and it just seems like it's kind of floating by a little bit too quickly. Nick Martinez is able to kind of get through the rest of that outing unscathed after giving up 1 in the first. You mentioned it just kind of, when you look at the box score, it has that mentality of, you kind of rolled over, even though it's a really good Reds bullpen. You understand that there are going to be games like that. But in a ballpark like this, Stefan, to kind of negate that edge when it just seems like they're rolling, they're getting 8, 9, 10 guys retired in a row, the home run can really be your friend. And the Cardinals just haven't been able to establish that power. 5 extra base hits for the Reds yesterday, just a couple for the Cardinals, and that ends up being sort of a difference maker as well.
Well, it didn't feel like it was going to be that type of game for the Cardinals offensively. I mean, 2 ringing doubles off the wall in the first inning from Nootbaar and Arenado. You thought, okay, the Great American Small Park is going to be in favor of the Cards today. It just didn't happen. And I think a lot of the time watching this game, and I'm sure you agree with this, it feels like they're taking a lot of quality pitches. They're getting behind on the count early and having to fight back. This is a team that's incredibly disciplined. Do they strike out a lot? No, not really. In the grand scheme, they don't strike out a lot. Lars Nootbaar, yes, he struck out a little bit more from the beginning of the season, but he takes a great at bat every time he's up. Brenden Donovan does the same thing, but you need the slug. With Ivan Herrera gone, I mean, I don't have the numbers exactly in front of me, but I know he's in the top 3 on the team in home runs.
Yeah.
And he hasn't played in 3 weeks. He hasn't played in 3 weeks. So you need that slug. You need, if not home runs, extra base hits. And it can't be single, trying to push runs across that way. You're going to have to either play small ball or you're going to have to slug. And ideally, you can do both. But yesterday, when the Cardinals tried to lay down that bunt, Pedro Pages retired at third. They couldn't push a run across. I think this team is still figuring out some growing pains, and they'll get there. But boy, that power, that slug is definitely sorely missed in that clubhouse right now.
And the outage has been notable because I can recall it's been a couple of weeks since I was looking at the stats and going, well, actually, the Cardinals are still in the top half of the league rankings in home runs. I think they had like 21 at the time. It's been sparingly that we've seen them hit dingers since then, because now they're tied for 21st in the league with just 24 home runs through, they've played 29 games. So they've even played an extra game compared to some of those teams that are bunched around them in the league-wide home run rankings. And I looked at the team stats, as you mentioned, Stefan. Ivan Herrera is still tied for the team lead, I should say, in homers. He's played 7 games. I mean, the rest of this team has played 28, 29 games, and those are guys that are, Lars Nootbaar's got 4 homers. Ivan Herrera's got 4 homers. Everybody else is at 3 or fewer, and we're a month through the season. So when you start to think about the modern game, and look, it's not all about the long ball. We all can appreciate the Cardinals and anybody else who is fan of old school baseball playing that small ball style and appreciating what it means to move the runner over and to have timely hits, to be able to support your pitching staff. All those things are great, but it's nice to be able to sock some dingers too. And the Cardinals right now just don't. Who profiles on this team as the 30 home run hitter? Because it's guys like that, a Gorman or a Walker, that maybe have that profile, but we're not seeing that play out in practice. We're not seeing those guys consistent enough making hard contact or any types of contact when the strikeout numbers are rising to be able to do that. And so when you talk about guys' raw power, to be able to harness that into a legitimate power source for this team, we haven't seen it. Guys like Burleson, who are supposed to be, a hit-first tool guy, he makes contact, but his strikeouts are up. The power is down. And so you go up and down this lineup and say the pace of you've played 30 games after today, that's almost a fifth of the season. There's nobody who you can do that quick multiplication and go, yep, that's a 20 home run hitter. That's a 30 home run hitter. They don't have guys on the team right now that are doing that. And that's got to change, you would think, for this Cardinals team to be able to equalize in the standings.
Absolutely. And I think that if you go back and you look, right, besides Arenado's walk-off home run, the last home run that we saw hit was not Arenado, was Lars Nootbaar hitting a 3-run home run onto the berm. Can you tell me the last home run before that? Do you remember who it was? And we talked about it. Joe and I talked about it yesterday. We couldn't figure it out. It had just been. It felt like forever since that.
There's maybe one I'm missing, but your point is well taken. Like the guys that are ideally producing these, it might be like Brenden Donovan at the Mets had one that weekend. I don't know how many they might have hit, but that was the game when it ends up going extras, or they don't go extras on that Friday night. Ryan Fernandez comes in and Lindor homers off of him. That's what I was mentioning. Like, I don't remember, you and I were doing a show, and it feels like it was several weeks ago, Stefan, where I said, the Cardinals have hit 21 homers on the season. That's 12th in baseball. That's not bad. They've got 24, and that was weeks ago when that happened. I think it was the 16th of April that Nootbaar hit his 3-run home run in a game that was started by Steven Matz, and they won that game. The fact that we can go back multiple weeks and say these are where the home runs came, it should be a little more difficult to do that, but it's not. We know the numbers, and the numbers have not been kind from a power perspective, and we gave a lot of praise to Brant Brown to begin the season, and I've always been a guy who says don't heap all of the criticism on the hitting coach when things aren't going well, but if we're going to praise him and say, hey, this is a team that it looks like a completely different offense, we have to maybe be honest now that we approach the 1st of May, and it's not looking like a different offense relative to what we've seen in past seasons. We know the players are the same. It's going to be about getting more performance out of those guys consistently before the Cardinals are a team that we're talking about offensively as being able to meet the expectations.
Well, when I was announcing in the minor leagues, I was announcing at the most hitter-friendly ballpark in all of baseball, minor league or major league. Hodgetown and Amarillo had the highest home run factor of any ballpark in baseball. And you hear this a lot from hitting coaches, is that, yeah, you could come in and intentionally hit 7 home runs in a game. I mean, we would routinely see teams hit 5, 6, 7 home runs in a game
Yeah.
multiple times a week during those 6-game series. They said, but we don't want to change our guys' approach. We want them to hit line drives. And I'm curious if I could sit down with Brant Brown and ask him, hey, when you get to Great American Ballpark, how strict are you staying on hit the ball on a line so that we don't ruin our approach? Because they figured out how to win at Busch Stadium. And the way that you win at Busch Stadium isn't by the long ball, because a lot of those balls are going to die at the warning track. You got to hit the ball to the gaps. You got to pull them down the lines. You've got to hit singles and advance the runner and play small ball. But when you go to a place like Cincinnati, sometimes I'm sure the philosophy will change for hitters, and you don't want to throw them out of rhythm. So I'm sure that that's something that would point to maybe their struggles on the road, is that it's tempting to try and hit the long ball because you haven't done it very much this year. We'll see if things change a little bit in game 2, but I don't know. I don't know if they're going to try and play like it's a slugfest, like other teams might if they came into Great American Ballpark.
Yeah, because you think about it, and it's been a quote that's floated around from Brant Brown, where there's a time to hit and there's a time to slug. If there is a time to slug, if that is part of the philosophy, it has to be when you travel to a ballpark like this. And yeah, you don't want to get away from the tenets of what make you good and what make you capable. But there is a ballpark factor that you might be able to take advantage of, and some batted balls that aren't going to go out in other places will go out here. You'll get credited for. As long as you're still maintaining your principles as a hitter, you'll get credit for those things. And it was mentioned, of course, in the comments that you play half your games at Busch, and so your home run numbers are going to be down, which is it's all well and good. But like, you have to be able to hit your homers on the road. Then, if we're going to excuse the lower home run numbers at home, and I'm just looking it up now, like Cardinal pitching hasn't given up a ton of homers in home games this season, which stands to reason because they're playing those home games at Busch Stadium. But I think the same principle should flow in reverse, where you talk about being able to at least benefit from the road environments that you're in, because when they're on the road, Cardinals pitching has given up 17 road home runs, which is the 9th most in baseball. So they're doing what you would expect. They're suppressing home runs at home because that's typically what you end up seeing happen. But when the Cardinals go on the road, offensively, are they hitting more home runs because they're playing in the same, sometimes hitter-friendly ballparks that the opponents are playing in? No, they're 27th in road home runs in MLB this year, and they've played, more home games than a number of the teams that are down there in the list with them. So that's an aspect of it that, all right, if we're going to credit and say, well, Busch Stadium, tough place to hit homers, hit them on the road. I mean, you have to find a way to be able to hit some home runs to at least be in the middle of the pack in road homers. Otherwise, maybe it's not the ballpark that we can say is the reason you're not homering at Busch. You just aren't a home run team, and it's okay if that's the case, because if you're going to play half your games somewhere where homers aren't going to be the way to sell out and win games, hit those liners. Okay, they've got to be hitting a bunch of doubles and producing runs that way, and the run production has gone down as well. So we can judge these teams based on the context, I think, Stefan, but at the end of it, we should still be able to say, here's what you should be producing based on all those factors, and I don't think it's unreasonable to suggest the Cardinals are falling short right now offensively.
I don't think it is either. And I think one thing that's important to note is they're still figuring out what this team is. And if this team is not going to be a slug-heavy team, I'm sure the philosophy will change from day to day on how they approach different pitchers, on how they approach each game, because you'll see a lot more small ball and then a whole lot less slug. Now, over time, you might see guys like Donovan really starting to drive the ball out of the yard. I don't think so, because that's not his game. But guys like Burleson and Gorman and Walker, once they turn it around, I think this team will have a completely different identity, and they have another opportunity tonight at 5:40 Central, Miles Michaelis versus Brady Singer in Game 2 to try and pick up their 3rd road win of the year. Brenden, you have any final thoughts?
Win some road games, boys. It'll make our lives a lot easier. That's about the long and short of it right now, isn't it? And it does become that self-fulfilling prophecy, which you don't want to see. You don't want to be having to talk about this. Let's talk about like real baseball topics moving forward rather than, well, they can't do well on the road. It's a dopey topic to talk about. I feel silly talking about it, but it's true. Like, there's a reason we talk about it, is because it's relevant. Make it irrelevant. Go out and win some road games, and we'll start being able to dig in on the other aspects of this team that I think we'd all prefer to be discussing.
Absolutely. I think focusing on the macro at this point in time, there's one elephant in the room, and it's winning
Yep.
the games on the road. Yes, you can look at everything under a lens and under a microscope and try and nitpick all the things that you don't like about this team, but this is a good team. Statistically, they have done a lot of things well. Now, that hasn't contributed to a lot of wins on the road. Maybe it will tonight as they try to stop the Reds, who are red hot in the National League as they climb and approach the top of the NL Central. For everybody here at Sports Hub STL, I'm Stefan Caray. Brenden Schaeffer, thanks so much for joining us. This was powered by Gray Bar. This is Cards Hub 365, and all content provided by DraftKings. The crown is yours. We'll see you later tonight, hopefully after a Cardinals win.